Hi there, welcome to another episode of NetSupport Radio. My name's Mark Anderson. I'm Head of Education at NetSupport, but today we are looking at corporate uses for one of our products, NetSupport School. I'm really delighted to welcome to the conversation today our Technical Support Manager, Andy Earp, who's going to share some of the ways in which NetSupport School could be used in a corporate space. And it's used in many, many different organisations in a really fantastic way, supporting lots of your activities in your business. But Andy is far better placed to talk to you about the ways in which it could have some benefits to you within your organisation. So first up, let's welcome Andy onto the show. Welcome, Andy. How are you doing today?
Yeah, really good, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm really, really good. Thank you very much. Lovely to see you again. I love our conversations, Andy. Every time we talk, I learn loads more things. And just when I think I've got a handle on all the things that our products can do here at NetSupport, I have a chat with you, and I come away thinking, it's like that sort of Jedi versus Padawan relationship between us. It really is. So really excited to have you share today about NetSupport School and its uses in a corporate space. To get us started, just in case people don't know what NetSupport School actually is, could you just sort of share about what it is and what it can be used for, please?
Yeah, so NetSupport School is our basically our classroom management system, and it's used primarily by teachers to connect to the student devices. And that could be, all different types of platforms supporting there. And they'll do things like deliver their training. So they will, they'll be monitoring those students. They'll be interacting with those students. They'll be collaborating with those students using a variety of different features available within the software. There is also a third level to that where you can also set up a technician's tool as well, which allows the technician to monitor the ongoing classes so they can see what tutors are connected to what students, and provide some admin help with those as well to support those devices. So yeah, primarily it would be used in a school setting. That is, where you do see it, but it's used in lots of different environments. I say you've got primary schools using it, you've got secondary schools using it, you've got universities using it, colleges using it, but also it is also used in corporate environments as well, in training centres. So, and that's what we're going to be looking at today, how that differs in that kind of corporate setting.
Great stuff. Thank you, Andy. One of the tools that has been had a massive explosion during the pandemic has been Teams. Now, people listening to the podcast to NetSupport Radio today might be thinking, well, why would a tool like NetSupport School be useful to me in the kind of environments you've just been sharing there? When we've got teams within our organisation, but obviously I know, like how different and how helpful NetSupport School can be versus something that is actually in Teams. So. Just to sort of get some clarity from the outset, how do you explain the differences between a tool like Teams to something like our NetSupport School?
So NetSupport School is allowing you to monitor those students. So straight away, when the teacher starts up their tutor console and they connect to the students that are in their classroom, they'll be able to monitor the thumbnails of those devices to keep an eye on what those students are doing. They'll also be able to present their screen to the students, deliver content in the form of journals to keep a record of what happened in that lesson, but also run quizzes as well. So the kind of amount of functionality available that gives a lot of access to the teachers and delivering URLs, sending files, it really does benefit the kind of classroom. And that can be lots of different classroom settings. It could be used in a terminal server environment, a VDI environment. It could be used supporting tablet devices. So it really is used in a broad spectrum of different classroom settings.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Andy. Because obviously Teams is super useful and it's lovely to better see people's faces, but the provision with NetSupport School is so much different, isn't it? It's so different and so helpful, but with that idea of being able to see student screens, share and present to devices which could be remote and all those different things as well, sharing of files, the quizzing, the journal, all those different things. It's a completely different beast to Teams, really, isn't it?
It really is, yeah, definitely.
So, Andy, for those companies that use NetSupport School within their corporate environments, what sort of things have they been sharing with you and your team? Have been the sort of favourite features of NetSupport School that enable them to engage and support their staff, or the people sort of buying into their services and what have you? How are they using NetSupport School, and what are their favourite features?
Yeah, so I'd say it is really kind of used in a different way to using NetSupport School in an education environment. When you're using it in a corporate environment, the scenarios that I've seen is training centres, but the students actually using devices that have dual screens, so they'll have dual monitors. Typically, you don't tend to find that as much in a education setting. Now, one of the benefits you have with NetSupport School is you can present the teacher screen to the students. Now, in a normal education setting, you'd be presenting in full screen mode to the students. It locks out their keyboard and mouse, and they're just watching what the teacher's doing. But in the corporate setting, what we tend to find, because they have these dual screen setups on the student machines, you can actually present the teacher screen to a window. And that means that in the corporate setting, they could have that window that's presenting the teacher screen on one of their monitors, and then they could actually be working along side by side. So they're actually putting practical kind of training with that as they follow the instructions from the teacher. And that's a difference that we tend to see in the corporate environment, a different kind of setup that we see. But also it's more about delivering content to those students as well. So in your attendees in a corporate environment, you're going to be using more functionality along the lines of sending files to them, delivering URLs so that they can go and research different sites. You're going to be presenting your screen. You'll be using the quiz mode functionality as well. So a lot of the corporate customers I work with, they're using those testing modules to run tests and perform kind of exams at the end of the training session, especially if it's maybe an onboarding session. You're trying to show them new procedures. So you could run a quick kind of quiz at the end just to get an idea as to find out, who's listening, who's actually taken that information on board. But then also there's a sign-in feature as well. So in a corporate setting, they want to keep a record as to which students were in that training session. So you can use the sign-in feature in NetSupport School to create a student registration report. So your attendees can enter their name information. Then you've got a registration report at the end. So you've got evidence, as which staff members attended that training. So it's used in a kind of different way to NetSupport School. And again, in a classroom environment, you might be using it more to kind of monitor what websites the students are visiting and locking down access to certain areas to keep the students steered in the right direction. And you don't tend to find that as much when it's used in the corporate environment. They are more using it for the journal functionality, as I say, the quizzes, the presenting your screen to the students. So it's using a different way. So it's nice to see that the software allows for both those environments.
That's great, Andy. Thank you. And I'm guessing, in the corporate environment, in induction or compliance training, the health and safety regulations, those sorts of things, that registration feature seems really, really useful for ensuring that you've got an actual evidence trail of actual engagement in the training, completion of it, and recognize and having all that in one place. I guess that's really, really useful for our corporate clients as well, isn't it?
It really is to be able to have that list as who attended that training is really important for that kind of corporate setting.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. So look, digging deeper into NetSupport School, have you got any sort of top tips for helping where NetSupport School can really help our clients? Have you got any tips that have from feedback that you've received? Sometimes it could actually be from our friends in education, but have you got any top tips that people, particularly corporates, have shared with you about the ways in which they use the platform?
Yeah, I mean, one kind of difference as well is that quite often in the corporate setting, the training is more, it might be more repetitive each time. You've got a set training session. Say it might be an onboarding process. It might be health and safety training. And what you can actually do with NetSupport School is you can actually record your screen. So you could actually pre-record a presentation, maybe going through a PowerPoint or going through a particular application or going through something that's on the tutor's screen. You can record that to a video file, and then you can actually present that to the students as part of your delivered training session. So you could actually, rather than have to perform that live each time, you could go back to the recording and present that recording to the students. So using that recording functionality is something that's a really handy tip just for that type of training that they're kind of performing there. I'd probably also say one of the things you could do as well, which might get missed by the corporate ones, is being able to exhibit the students. So it's not necessarily just about presenting the teacher's screen to the rest of the class. You actually got a exhibit feature in there. So if you've got an attendee of that training and you want to present what they're doing to the rest of the class, then that is a feature that you can use as well. And that's sometimes missed by the corporate environment, but again is a really nice, important way of kind of showing that everybody's understanding the training.
Yeah, absolutely. With my teacher hat on, actually, if there's a sort of common misconception that you can see appearing in the training environment in which you're delivering, the ability to sort of bring up the example which isn't quite right enables you to have those conversations about how to make it right and to correct it and improve it and that sort of thing, which again is super helpful for learning and can be used in multiple different kinds of environments. So yeah, great tip there. Moving on to our next question, or my next question for you, Andy. When it comes to technology on an IT admin sort of wish list, as it were, often, and quite rightly, what our IT managers will be looking to do is to find solutions that address problems that organisations are facing. So, if I was an IT manager thinking, well, it all sounds very well and good, NetSupport School could be used for training and these sort of things, but what sort of problems does it solve?
I mean, really, it's about kind of allowing you access to those student devices. So you've got the training room scenario where you've basically got your desktops. That's typically the environment that I tend to see when I'm working with the corporate customers. They've got their training room there. We have mentioned that in NetSupport School, you have got the ability to apply restrictions to the students. So if you did need to do lockdown access on those devices, if you need to get the attention of the students, you've got the ability to lock their screens. If you need to limit access to what websites that they want to visit to keep them more focused on their training, you've got the ability with the approved websites to be able to do that in NetSupport School. That often gets a bit missed by the corporate customers. So I say typically they're using it more for delivering the content side, but really using it to allow you to keep those students focused that are attending the session, limiting what websites they're going to just the ones that relate to the course. That type of functionality is what I would say would really kind of help. But also the deployment of the software as well. A lot of corporates, they might just have a single or they might have multiple rooms that they need to deliver the training in. So being able to use NetSupport School and deploy that automated out to those machines, so doing silent installations, controlling the software with the ADMX template files, really makes it easy for kind of deploying that out. Another environment where I've seen it used recently is in virtual environments, and this is something that I've seen more recently with remote workers, where they're accessing virtual environments on the corporate network, and they've actually got the NetSupport School product installed within that, where they're delivering the training as well. So again, if they've moved away from that corporate kind of training center room, they can still use the NetSupport School product for delivering the training in that virtual environment. So, I've seen that, and that's been quite a popular usage case that we've seen with a number of corporates that have contacted us. Another one we've had recently is allowing you to install the students on your workstations, and then staff members actually joining the session. So I was working with a company, and they were essentially delivering kind of bespoke training, and the attendees would change, and you could essentially have the student installed on the end user's machines, and then they would select to join a class to actually join the training session. So again, a little bit different than your typical kind of classroom corporate training center role, where you've got your devices around the actual office, and then they can just decide to join the training session when they need to. So yeah, it really does kind of meet a lot of different requirements.
It really does. Thanks, Andy. There's so much there. I want to dive into one final question, if I can, which is around sort of top tips. As you know, and yourself, Andy, I do a vlog at NetSupport called Tip Top Tips for Education. So with that sort of tip-top tips kind of thing in mind, have you got any sort of top tips? And I know that lots of our existing customers listen to the NetSupport Radio podcast. So with that in mind, have you got any sort of top tips? I mean, top sort of 3 tips perhaps that you'd like to share around NetSupport School that could be helpful to those using NetSupport School in a corporate environment?
So I would probably say taking on board the journal feature. It's a really good feature, and some corporates do use it, but it's not used by everyone. And I think sometimes it's just a case of understanding how you can use it in the environment. And it's all about taking evidence away from the training session. So using the journal feature, the teacher can choose to start a journal. They can then populate that with notes relating to the training course. They could populate it with a list of URLs. If they run a survey during the training, they can add the results of the survey to the journal. So you can really start putting a lot of information on that. And what that's going to do is essentially it's going to create a PDF on the teacher's machine, and it's going to create a PDF journal on each of the students' machines. And with that, the students will get a copy of the notes at the end of the training course. The corporate users can go away and they've got this nice PDF with a list of useful links on there that they can go to, a list of notes from the teacher that they can review, relating to the training course that was delivered. But also the students, if you want to, they can have access to essentially add their own notes to their own personal copy of that journal. So, if you're asking them to keep notes, rather than having to scribble it down on a piece of paper and lose that 10 minutes later, they could be using the journal feature to add their own notes. And it's a real nice way of collecting resources from that training. And as I say, it's something that sometimes, again, gets missed, but it's a real nice feature. Nice to have something with that. And also, you're not limited with that journal. It's worth just adding that, once the class is over and you've stopped the journal, if that same training session comes in the next day, you can start that journal again and start populating more content to it. So you can really build up that PDF. Maybe it's a 2-day training course. So you're not limited to having 2 journals that they have to take away. You could put that all onto a single journal PDF file for those students. So it's a really nice way of kind of delivering content to them again.
Fantastic. Any more tips for us, Andy?
There's always lots. It's trying to think of the best ones to go through. I say, I think kind of with the journal functionality you've got there, I think when it comes to things like delivering content to them as well, you've got the ability to transfer files one-to-one to machines, to transfer files on a file distribution basis. But again, what sometimes gets missed is the send collect work feature. Really nice feature as well. Rather than you having to send out a file to them and request for the students to email that file back once they've maybe had a chance to answer a questionnaire document you might have sent out to them. Instead, what you can do with the send collect work feature is it's a nice step-by-step wizard. You can go through, you can pick your questionnaire document from your teacher's machine. You can then decide where you want that to be delivered to on the student's machine. You could use the shortcuts to pick either the desktop or the documents location of the students. That will then transfer that file out when you're ready to the students. And then maybe half an hour later when the training course is finished, or, the next day when the training course comes back, you can say to actually collect that work from them. And what that then does is it produces a subfolder on the teacher's machine based on each of the students' name, and it will contain their updated copy of that questionnaire document. So again, it's a nice automated way of saying, right, we've sent some work out to them. Now let's let them work on that. And then when we're ready, we'll collect that from them. And that could maybe be a feedback questionnaire on the actual training that you've just delivered. So it could be, you've all had your training session, and then they come back the next day. How did you find the training? And then you can have that document that you've pulled back from those devices. And it's all nice and automated. You get an update as to who you've pulled it back from and who maybe you've not pulled it back from.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Andy. Can I feel bad. Can I share a tip? Because with my teacher hat on, something I found really useful with NetSupport School myself in the classroom was the ability to do things which help cut corners, to help me be more efficient and to be quick and things. And you mentioned it a few times in what you shared, Andy, which is about sort of sharing URLs and all the rest of it. But the thing I love, one of my favourite features, apart from with my teacher hat on, I love looking their workstation screen so I get their attention on me, to be fair. But Another feature that I find super useful is the ability to actually open up URLs and websites on their screens for them. So much time can be wasted waiting for people to type in the correct address. And if you've got people, that scenario you described earlier, for example, where you might have people working on workstations which are a bit more geographically disparate other than in that sort of training room scenario, super useful bringing it up and again, saving time so that you can focus on the sort of the teaching and learning activity that you're doing in whatever setting that you've got. I found that super, super useful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The quick send for the URLs, the quick launch feature that allows you to do that it really does save you a lot of time. And the trainer can populate that list before the class starts as well. And that's the nice thing with NetSupport School. It's, you can do things on the fly and it's quick and easy to do things on the fly, but it's nice. You haven't got to be connected to the students. You could literally start up your tutor, before your attendees have even entered the building, and you could start populating your list of URLs. You can get your files ready to send to the students. You can put in your summary information for your journal. You can populate that tutor ready. You could also, it's possible to profile the tutor as well. So you could go really advanced with the tutor. You can go straight in and just use it and enter your class name manually, but you can also profile it. So if you've got set training sessions, you've got a health and safety training, you've got this training, you could create a tutor profile for each of those, which pre-populates all that information. So again, it just, when the tutor starts up, you can say, right, I'll pick the profile that relates to the health and safety one. Then it will load all those items relating to that. So again, there's a lot of in-depth features you can go in there, and quite often they get missed just because the product is nice and easy to use straight away. Some of those advanced things do get missed.
No, look, brilliant stuff, Andy. And clearly, just like me, you're a big fan of NetSupport School too. So great to sort of feed into the conversation as well. Probably wrong of me as the host. I couldn't help myself. Sorry, Andy. If you're interested in learning more about NetSupport School, then as you can see scrolling across the bottom, you can just visit netsupportschool.com. If you'd like a quick chat with any of us, then obviously there's a chat bot which runs on the site, which then feeds straight through to our team, who will be able to sort out a conversation around a demonstration or a trial of the product, all these sorts of things as well. You can also reach out to us, as you can see on Andy's screen there, to us on social media at NetSupport Group as well. But for now, thank you very much for joining myself and Andy on this episode of NetSupport Radio, and we look forward to you joining us for another episode again in the future. Thanks to you, Andy, for coming on and sharing about your vast knowledge and experience of NetSupport School in a corporate environment. And we look forward to welcoming all of you back to another episode of NetSupport Radio in the very near future. For now, this is me, Mark Anderson, saying ta-ta, and wanted to say keep yourself safe out there and look after yourselves. Thanks for joining us. Cheers.